Washington, the willful blindness of the left in the wake of terror attacks. That's tonight's angle. Every time there's a terror attack, liberal politicians and their partners in the media come down with a sudden case of amnesia. They react as if random jihadi attacks have never happened before. Yesterday, this Uzbek immigrant mows down innocent people in New York, yells Allahu Akbar at the top of his lungs, and leaves a series of notes in Arabic suggesting he murdered in the name of ISIS, and yet some in the press are left scratching their heads.
Becky, why would he have an animus toward the United States?
What? Might as well ask, as an Uber driver, why would he have anger toward us? Some will do anything to avoid the elephant in the room. We've allowed adherents of a poisonous strain of radical Islam to enter the United States, and they're plotting to kill our citizens, whom they consider to be apostates. But why learn from the past and grapple with reality when we can be comforted by Stephen Colbert?
Tomorrow and the next day, New Yorkers will wake up to new details about what happened. But tomorrow and the next day, New Yorkers will also wake up and keep going. Because in an uncertain world, one thing is for sure. New Yorkers will never live in fear.
And if that bromide doesn't calm your nerves, today Mayor de Blasio picked up where Colbert left off.
We understand this was an attack on our values. It was an effort to break our spirit. But as an effort to break our spirit, it failed.
But of course New Yorkers are resilient. They survived and rebuilt after 9/11, Mayor. But this misses the entire point. Why must any American suffer or die to satisfy the liberal dogma of diversity? Remember, this Uzbek murderer got here through the diversity visa program. It's a kind of immigrant Powerball. It allows 50,000 or so winners a fast pass to citizenship and access to all our government freebies. Today, following the New York terror attack, the president resumed his call to end the diversity visa program.
I am today starting the process of terminating the diversity lottery program. We want a merit-based program where people come into our country based on merit. And we want to get rid of chain migration.
Now, the president's talking sensible immigration policy, but the left, of course, wants to demonize him or just talk about their own agenda.
The notion that you want to focus on a visa waiver program or a extreme vetting, politicize this tragedy in the morning after, I think that's a sad day for this country.
The president's tweets, I think, were not helpful. I don't think they were factual. I think they tended to point fingers and politicize the situation. I think it is madness, the number of assault weapons that we have in this country. I hope one day we'll have a federal policy that actually brings sanity to the gun policy laws in this country.
Gun policy laws? What is he talking about? Since the terrorist instrument of choice, of course, was a rented truck, should we ban them as well, Governor? Now, the reason these folks avoid the truth or divert our attention to these side topics every time we experience a terror attack is because the reality, the current situation, conflicts with their own warped worldview. The government's chief responsibility is to secure the homeland, which in turn protects the freedoms that we all enjoy. But on the left, there is one value that seems to trump all others, even safety. It's the D word.
All of those immigrants make America more American. That diversity that we have is a strength in our country.
We are the best problem solvers in the world. Our diversity is a strength.
This is the cult of diversity, and it's led us to this dangerous program without which 8 innocent people would be alive today. Now, remember what Chuck Schumer said back in 2006 in defense of the visa lottery.
In fact, my city of New York has dramatically benefited from this program, and diverse countries such as Ireland, Poland, Nigeria have had large numbers of immigrants be able to come, settle roots, and really help the diversity of New York and the diversity of America.
Yeah, I mean, he left out Uzbekistan on that list. Well, tears flowed down Senator Schumer's cheeks. Remember back in January when the Muslim immigrants were affected by the president's travel ban? Well, where were his tears today? People don't need politicians' crocodile tears or their cliches. Congress must act and stop this madness. Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell, rather than losing sleep over the fate of the DACA kids, they should shut down this diversity visa farce now, before another American or tourist to our country dies. And that's the angle. Joining us now is Senator David Perdue, a Republican from Georgia. Senator Perdue shares President Trump's goal of getting rid of the diversity immigrant visa program and has introduced legislation to do just that. Senator, good to see you. Thanks for coming on the program tonight. I have a hard time after a hideous event such as what we saw last night, seeing that and then seeing people come out today who still can't connect the dots. I called it willful blindness, but it's more than that, really. This is a dangerous dereliction of duty on the part of politicians to keep this scam of a diversity visa program going.
This president called this out last year, and I give him high marks that this year he's backing our RAISE Act that Tom Cotton and I are putting forward. And he talked about it today. We want to go to a merit-based immigration system. But let's talk about this diversity lottery situation. This is a big fraud. It's fraught with fraud itself. It has Social Security fraud. It has identity fraud. But worse than that, Laura, is that 30% of the visas given out under this system go to countries that are identified by ICE as harboring and promoting terrorism. In fact, the largest recipient country for these visas is the third largest is Iran. This is an insidious program. It needs to go away tonight.
Who are the big champions of this program?
Well, the left, they want diversity, but what it does is
but
just...
But does business want this too? Is there some cheap labor? No, it's not about business.
No,
this isn't the guest worker,
no, sir.
Nothing like that.
No, this is all about a program that was envisioned by Ted Kennedy and Schumer years ago.
And Bush, George H.W. Bush. He signed it into law in 1990, correct?
He did.
I see there's a line or a Venn diagram maybe. It's the politicians on the right and the left who are more kind of the globalist types, who they love all these international trade deals, regardless of their effect on the workers. They love the idea of amnesty or massive amounts of guest workers coming into the country. So globalism and their quest for diversity trumps safety, security, workers' rights in the United States, and I find that also to be troubling.
Well, most other countries in the world have already moved to protect their national borders, their national security, and to provide for the economic growth, and they do that within the immigration system. Canada and Australia, decades ago...
How about Japan? How about New Zealand? Try to get into New Zealand today,
exactly.
Japan.
But they went to a merit-based system where they bring the right kind of people in today relative to the economy, and we don't. We have a family-based chain migration system that's got to end.
Explain that. So a lot of our viewers tonight, they hear chain migration, like, what the heck are you talking about? So you're going to bring in your old grandmother who's dying of cancer from Mexico. You heartless, horrible senator from Georgia. You don't care about the poor Mexican grandmother dying of cancer. That's what they always say. They go right to you're heartless and cruel.
Well, today we bring in 1.1 million green card recipients a year. That's about twice our historical average, but that's not the real problem. The real problem is about 70,000 come in that are skill-based. Another 70,000 are immediate family. The rest are chain. That means that a recipient can name their grandmother, their cousin, their uncle, or whatever, and then that recipient can name their grandmother and uncle and cousin. And so it goes on and on and on. And so after decades of doing this, we have now an immigration system that does not fit the economic needs, and as we saw in this loophole, it does not protect our national security.
And what does it do for assimilation? Which is another issue, I think, that, again, people are afraid to talk about this because they're called, all these names, or they're nativists, as John McCain said. When you talk about, like, are you assimilating, or are you creating mini Pakistans, or mini Irans, or mini Somalias in the United States, where we see this in St. Paul and Minnesota, and we see this in Michigan and Dearborn and in Hamtramck. You see this in different parts of boroughs in New York. And again, most of the people are fine people and they work hard. But the melting pot seems to just be melting down. It doesn't seem to be a melting pot in some of these areas. Not all, but some of them.
But this is the biggest difference since 1990 in the Ted Kennedy idea, and that is that if you look at our historical immigration, they did that. They came in, they assimilated in the communities, they learned English, they developed a skill, and they contributed to the economy. What we have going today is this politically correct, we want an open border. I mean, that's fundamentally what the progressives want, is an open border.
They don't want any border. They don't want any. They don't want any deportation, really, except maybe murderers. But other than that, they want no deportation. They want everyone can come and go, and it's more of a global order. That's what they've always wanted.
Well, and what we're trying to do is add some reason. By the way, what we want to do in a merit-based system and eliminate chain migration is the same conclusion the Democrats came to under Bill Clinton. President Bush commissioned, George H.W. commissioned a commission to look at immigration.
I'm sick of commissions, personally. I'm sick of these commissions. Every time I turn around, there's another commission. They never get anything done.
But here's what the Democrats did. They suggested a merit-based system, and Clinton acknowledged that and supported that. So this should be a bipartisan approach to this thing.
How many people, what's the percentage of immigrants in the United States today who've come in under a chain migration? I read somewhere it was ridiculously high. It's like 13 million over the last 25 years.
I'll give you the number every year. It's 1.1 million, and only 140 is the worker and the immediate family. You do the math on that. That's over 900,000 people a year are coming in the chain migration iteration. It's a geometric progression. It really is.
So it's exponential. It keeps
absolutely.
going. Are you confident that the Democrats will limit chain migration? Otherwise, they're going to kill the DREAM Act. They don't limit chain migration. They're going to kill the DREAM Act. Will they do it?
Well, we'll see. I mean, this is where the self-interest on the other side, we're going to test that against what's good for the country.
Senator, thank you so much for coming in. It's great to see you, as always. And joining us now for reaction in Washington, Scott Bolden, former Democratic chairman in Washington, D.C., and from Virginia Beach, Virginia, Brigitte Gabriel, the president of Act for America. Great to see you both. All right, let's get into this. Brigitte, you heard me on the diversity cult. I mean, diversity is more important than security, safety, rule of law, perhaps due process. The diversity word. You hear it on college campuses, but now it's apparently our immigration policy as well.
Right now, diversity is killing Americans, and we have 8 dead people that we haven't even seen their funerals yet, with their families mourning. This program maybe started with a good intention, but right now it needs to be eliminated, because right now the countries on this diversity visa qualification program are Libya, Yemen, Syria, Lebanon, Iraq. Really? Do we really need to be bringing people from these countries, knowing that they are harboring terrorists and knowing that ISIS already said that they want to use whatever means possible to infiltrate the country, and they are using this program, and it needs to end, and end immediately. And I tell you, it was great listening to Senator Perdue, and I pledge that my organization will get and mobilize behind his bill to make sure we get it passed.
Scott, you're from D.C. originally. D.C. there's a lot of need in this city. There are a lot of folks who could use a helping hand, use an opportunity. Why would we bring 50,000 people a year into the country? Many of them have no skills, have no affinity for the culture, many of them more burdens on society, when we need these jobs for lower income Americans and, frankly, minority Americans in places like the District of Columbia?
But why do you presume that if we bring immigrants in and we value diversity, because we are a country of immigrants, and the value in diversity, we are stronger because we're different. The three of us are very different, and we create the strength in this country. Why is that so wrong? These 8 to 10 people were killed by a terrorist, if you will. They weren't killed by that diversity or travel visa program, and he did do what he was supposed to do. He was here for 7 years. He came here in 2010.
He did do what he was supposed to do. What are you talking about? The man killed 8 people, and he shouldn't be here.
He assimilated.
If we didn't have... He assimilated? Is that assimilation to you? Are you out of your mind?
He had a job. No, I'm not out of my mind. He assimilated for 7 years. He was radicalized while he was here in the U.S. Take away the program, he'd still be here. And we've got to fight that radicalism.
Hold on, Brigitte. Let me
he was radicalized here.
Guys,
that's all I'm saying.
Scott, let me just ask you a question.
Sure.
Since you admit that you just said someone could come in and we could seem like, wow, he got a job. He's working at Kmart, or he's working somewhere. Oh, he's assimilating. But because we have the internet now, because we have the internet, we can't tell, can we, if you're especially if you're Muslim, because that's predominant terror attacks come from Muslims. If you're Muslim, you're in the United States, maybe you're alone, maybe you don't have any contacts here, you could become radicalized. My question to you, Scott, is Is the diversity lottery program worth a single life of an innocent American in your estimation? Should we just say we're going to sacrifice X number of people because we love this idea of diversity?
I think the value and power of diversity is alive and well in this country.
So the answer
is yes. It's not worth one life. Hold on, I'm going to answer. It's not worth one life, but let's be really clear. The toughest part of Homeland Security and our FBI is finding those who are being radicalized in this country.
Why should we burden the FBI
vetting
with another job to do
when not another
you do not have a constitutional right to come into the United States? This was created in 1989 by H.W. and Kennedy. And they decided it was going to be good for diversity.
Laura,
now we have 8 dead Americans, and apparently certain people are fine with that. Brigitte,
no,
my
let me just say
question on
this.
is
the Republicans have as much to do with this law as the Democrats did. You had a Republican president that signed this law. In fact, Charles Schumer in 2013, with bipartisan support, certainly tried to kill it. And you know who killed it? The Republicans in the House. That's why it died.
Scott, if you think I'm going to defend the Republicans on this, you don't know what host you're talking to. The Republicans have been a disaster on immigration, most of them, not Purdue.
Well, we agree on one thing at least, right?
Exactly. Brigitte, there is a problem. Like we have hundreds of thousands of Muslims in the United States, and they're law-abiding. They don't cause any trouble. They're working. They have families. A lot of them have very conservative values politically. Sometimes they vote Democrat, but they have some conservative social values. We can't track everyone in the country, and nor can we profile everyone in the country because they happen to be coming in on a visa and are Muslim. So they're here. They have families. Now what do we do?
Well, we have to be careful, and we have to start profiling and basing our profiling on behavior and mannerism.
You're going to profile Muslims
in the United States?
You said that on national TV. You want to profile Muslims. How about black people?
And mannerism. I let you speak. Now you let me speak out of respect. Now, I come from Israel. You profile people based on behavior and mannerism. People that are lying, usually they fidget, they sweat, they smile, they fake their smile, their facial muscles do not change. We need to invest in human intelligence and start profiling people who are behaving badly in this country. We know that a lot of FBI agents are already monitoring mosques in this country. They are already monitoring terrorism in this country. We have 1,000 open investigations right now in all 50 states on ISIS operatives in the United States. That is a problem. And there is a problem when 80% of terrorism is coming out of a community that represents only 2% of the American society, and that's the Muslim community.
I'm never going to support profiling whatsoever. Profile everyone who's dangerous.
Scott, I'll give you the last word.
Listen, I'm never going to support profiling as an African American. If you're going to profile with human intelligence, then you do that across the board. You profile Hispanics, you profile white nationalists, you profile domestic terrorism, as well as those on the international front. All Muslims, this whole idea that Muslims somehow are bad and they're the ones that are committing these crimes, that's just simply not the case.
Well,
and when you start profiling, you violate their rights.
Right. Well, Scott, I think
when we look at terrorism,
this law was in place for 27 years before an incident like this happened. 27 years, and now you want to gut the program.
Okay, Scott, I'll just say this, that you do concede, do you not, that overwhelmingly the terror attacks in the United States and Europe are committed by Muslims, correct? Or people who call themselves Muslims, correct? Or you don't even concede that?
When you combine, you add Europe to it and the incidents that we know about, but we have domestic terrorism here that we simply don't admit to.
We're back on the Oklahoma City bombing. Okay. All right. I appreciate both of you. Thank you. We're out of time. Coming up, shocking examples of media bias in the coverage following the New York City terror attack. And Coulter's here to break it all down with us. Welcome back. As we mentioned in the angle, some politicians are using the New York City terror attack to foment a totally false narrative about terrorism and immigration. To make matters worse, the media, they seem to have no problem advancing this storyline. For example, just hours after the attack, NBC News offered this headline: Muslim Americans again brace for backlash after New York attack. Their concern for the 8 dead victims is just positively overwhelming. The Associated Press posted a tweet this morning saying, quote, investigators seek motive after driver in a rented truck mowed down people on a bike path in New York City. Motive? He yelled Allahu Akbar after he carried out the attack and requested an ISIS flag in his hospital room. You don't need to be Columbo to figure that one out. Joining us for reaction here in Washington is Democratic strategist and adjunct professor David Goodfriend. And in New York is Ann Coulter, a nationally syndicated columnist. It's great to see both of you. Ann, let's start with you. I mean, the cries of Islamophobia. I mean, how long did it take, Ann? Maybe, I don't know, 15 minutes after the terror attacks in New York? It's like clockwork.
6 hours, NBC News in a tweet, for those keeping count. No, the media is very, very predictable. The media is on the side of the Democrats, and the Democrats haven't been changing any minds recently. It's not like they have good ideas. They're bringing in ringers. They want this constant transformation of America so that they can win elections. In fact, it's come up just this week with the Virginia election, I think it was in the Washington Post, no, the New York Times, Democrats fretting that maybe all of the Hispanics that have moved into Virginia may not come out and vote for the Democrat against Gillespie. This is all about the vote for the Democrats. For the Republicans, the corrupt Republicans, it's all because their donors want the cheap labor. But don't imagine that Democrats are changing any minds here.
David, on the issue of this diversity visa program, like 50,000 individuals get it's a lot. It's like a Powerball for visas. Is that really where we should be today, given the labor market, given the fact that we have a lot of still minorities who are looking for work, who need better jobs, and I don't really get it. We're a pretty diverse country, increasingly diverse now. Why do we need a diversity program?
Well, look, Laura. First of all, I come from the upper Midwest. I know about factories that have shut down, and I know a lot of the concerns about finding jobs for people here at home. But I want the first words I say about this to be that I'm thinking about the families of those 8 people. I think we all should take a deep breath and realize real people were killed, real people are hurt. And we shouldn't allow ourselves to be terrorized by the terrorists. I'm going to ride my bike down a path here in Washington, D.C. tomorrow. I'm going to ride the metro. I won't be intimidated. These are the kind of things we should be talking about, unifying us as a nation,
kind of a
bringing us
cliche.
together.
I mean, I like you, David. Don't get me wrong. You're a great guy, but I mean, that's just the stuff we hear all the time. I'm resilient. Of course, we're resilient. We're Americans. We all know that.
Well, but you asked about the program. You asked about that visa program.
But they would be alive if we didn't have that cockamamie program in place.
Well, that's like,
well,
okay, but hold on. That's like me saying, but Laura, that's like me saying there'd be people alive in Las Vegas if we didn't have assault weapons for sale. How do you react to that?
Well, I think in this case, we have a Second Amendment that actually gives us the right to keep and bear arms.
So you would argue that
you don't have a constitutional right to come into the United States
I'm going to get some
from
insight.
Uzbekistan.
You're helping me.
That's
Give
right.
me insight into the mind of a conservative. So because the Second Amendment is there, you think that the shooting and the gun sales are okay. But because we can talk about a law here that passed in 1990, that's completely
that's a
the reason the law
tautology.
has.
That's not exactly what I'm saying.
Okay, what are you
all
saying?
what I'm saying. I think liberals have gone too far. This is why Trump got elected, and I think everyone gets their blinders on. Ann's written books about this. I've talked about it for years. We get in our blinders and we think, okay, we have the right answers. But you forget that most people in the country aren't all that political. Most people don't really care about politics. They want food on the table. They want safety.
Agreed.
They want security. They maybe save a little for retirement. This seems to make not a lot of sense to most Americans. I bet if you did a poll on this, and Ann, you can chime in, just on this issue of the diversity visa, you ask like a random guy in upstate New York, should we have a diversity visa? You ask people down south, maybe even California, it's Hispanic immigrants, Ann. They're not seeing a lot of hikes in their wages either. Do you think they're all, yeah, we need more diversity? I don't think so. I think the Democrats make a mistake on this one.
You keep bringing up, I think, a fantastic point. You've brought it up with all of your guests, and I would like to more fully answer it, and that is this religion of diversity. No, diversity is just treated like it's automatically a good thing, like the word organic. And we have diversity plus lottery, because, that's how Kate Upton picks who she's going to date. She has a lottery. Otherwise, professional sports players and rock and rollers, they'd have the inside track. The Astros should be getting chess players and the AV teams.
Could I ask Anna a
guy
question?
with club foot. It's crazy. We are the greatest country in the world. We should be choosing people who are going to be our fellow citizens the way the Astros and the Dodgers choose their players and not be taking people with club feet. It's all our choice. And whenever Americans find out the way any aspect of our immigration policy is run, it is not popular. The Democrats don't want to talk about it. Unfortunately, until Donald Trump, no Republican wanted to talk about it either.
Yeah, bingo.
Well, Ann, I want to ask you this question because I'm really curious to know the answer. there was a legislative proposal put forward by Republicans and Democrats to get rid of this program and have a blanket reform that was rejected in the House. Do you support that? Do you support that bipartisan effort to reform immigration?
It was rejected as part of a plan to amnesty 30 million illegal aliens.
So no, so you don't. You don't support it.
So no,
I mean,
we would like to get rid
important.
of the diversity lottery. We do not want to amnesty 30 million illegals.
Well, see, that's interesting.
We have a hard break here, guys, but this is a great segment and a really good conversation. I want to have you both back.
Okay.
Phenomenal. Thanks for being with us. And straight ahead, a rare and exclusive interview with my former boss, Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas. You will not want to miss it. Clarence Thomas had one of the most distinguished legal careers in American history. He's the only second African American to ever serve on the Supreme Court, and Justice Thomas likes to stay out of the spotlight. He rarely speaks to the media. Luckily, he made an exception for me. Maybe it's because I clerked for the Supreme Court for him just a few years ago. We spoke earlier about his judicial philosophy, his contentious confirmation hearing, and his friendship and respect for the late, great Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia. Welcome, Justice Thomas. Great to see you.
Well, thank you for having me, Laura.
It's only been 25 years since I worked for you. Oh, I'm totally dating myself, and that's completely fine. You know, I was thinking a lot about what I wanted to ask you in this interview, because I know you kind of loathe doing any press interviews, and that's well established. But I was thinking about your friendship with Justice Scalia, and he was also a friend of mine. Tell me about the court without him.
Well, I think the most charitable thing to say is that it's different. And I think my colleagues would agree. I mean, there's sort of a big emptiness to it. He had a way of filling up the room with his personality, his quips, his intellect, his humor. You know, when he's alone or in a group, he's got to be on stage, and he was a lot of fun. You know, it's interesting. I did not know him before I went to the court. And I got to know him, and we developed a friendship, a bond of trust. And so for me, personally, it's very different. And I have excellent colleagues there. I mean, Justice Alito is just a fabulous person. Justice Gorsuch is just outstanding. And of course, my friends who've been there for a while are just good people. It's worked out very well. But without him, it's very, very different. It's an entirely different court without him.
Justice Gorsuch, there's some reports that he's ruffled some feathers at the court. Is there anything to that, or how is he perceived?
Yeah. Well, it's good. I don't have any feathers, so I'm certainly not a part of that.
Well, junior justices typically hang back a little bit at the beginning, but I kind of like the fact that he went right in there. It's like,
he's no different from any. He is a good man, and I have no idea what they're talking about. You know, years ago, I heard reports that Justice Scalia was tossing things and slamming doors, and
I never saw
all this. I never did either, and I was next door to him, so I said, "What are you holding back when I'm here?" Because I hear you're doing all these things. So no, you know, people have to say what they have to say. I don't see all those things. When you're new on the court, you're trying to find your way. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of personal adjustments. You're moving your family. You're getting through the effects of a confirmation. I don't care who that is. And it is an adjustment period. This is not the Court of Appeals. This court is quite different from being for him on the 10th Circuit, for me having been on the D.C. Circuit. You were there in my second year, so you know it's still going through an adjustment.
Well, we had that small office, Justice.
That's right.
We had like a closet for an office. Now you guys have this really nice chambers, but we had to deal with a small, tiny office.
Law clerks have those chambers now, so. I just want you to know they put no judges.
Yeah, no one gets in there anymore. The court itself, you know, the outsiders, people who never had a chance to visit the court, they hear about the court. They see that annual photo that you all take, and
it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, it's so exciting, and you all look like you just lost your best friend. I mean, you're rarely smiling, and it looks really kind of dour, an unhappy place to be. And I know you were in the seminary for a time, and I think, gee, Justice Thomas still leads that kind of monastic life. You know, you don't give many interviews, you don't talk to all that many people in the public eye. But is Is it collegial on the inside for people who don't know about it?
It is a good place to work. You can disagree with this opinion or that, but I'm not the person to say it is a sour place or it's a dour place or that it is funereal in its atmosphere. It is a wonderful place to work.
I loved it in Jan Greenberg's book in 2007 about the court, Supreme Conflict. She exploded this myth that pretty much everyone had to concede was a myth, that you were like Scalia's puppet early on, and that you just were. That you just agree with Scalia and all this stuff. And then, of course, she went from case to case to case involving race, involving, Aryan Brotherhood, prison gang membership. Remember that after Fortis? A long time ago. And that you ended up having your own view of jurisprudence, your own approach to judging that was completely unique, and sometimes to the consternation of Justice Scalia.
Well, he and I, we had a bond, but I have a long history of being told what to do. I really do that well, I think people, again, as I said to you earlier, people have to say what they have to say. It is a place where individuals do their work. Nobody follows the other person. Justice Scalia didn't follow me, and I didn't follow him. And I dare say nobody up there follows another person.
The reasoning of your opinions, your philosophy, is described as alternatively formalistic, rigid, strictly conservative. How do you describe your philosophy, Justice?
I think it's get it right. It's I think we are required to reason to a conclusion. And that's what we try to do, and try to do it in a way that it is accessible to regular people. I think when people don't agree with you, you said you're going to a football game. I am a huge Nebraska fan.
Yeah, we're getting into that, by the way, the Cornhuskers.
No, I mean, we're not doing that. We're doing okay, but not great.
Yeah.
The volleyball team, my favorite team, is
great.
Fabulous.
Okay, well, good.
So,
how's the field hockey team doing?
No, volleyball is a big deal. We have over 8,000 people per game.
That's amazing.
So people have a tendency in sports to be outcome oriented. So you want a particular outcome. You want to win the game. If the referees make a call consistent with the outcome you prefer, then you say the referee did a great job because that referee has somehow benefited or made possible the outcome you want. I think we have to be careful not to take outcomes that we want and backwash that into the process of decision making. So you don't reach a decision and then force the process. You use the process and try to do it in a legitimate way. Again, something Justice Scalia and I agreed on. You don't justify the outcome. You reason to the outcome.
28 years ago, you went through the worst confirmation spectacle in history.
Mr. Chairman, I am a victim of this process. My name has been harmed. My integrity has been harmed. My character has been harmed. My family has been harmed. My friends have been harmed. There is nothing this committee, this body, or this country can do to give me my good name back. Nothing. I will not provide the rope for my own lynching or for further humiliation. No job is worth what I've been through. No job.
You said at the time that I'm a victim of this process. My name has been harmed. My integrity has been harmed. My character has been harmed. No job is worth what I have been through. No job. Was it worth it?
That's a good question. I think we are called to do certain things. In my youth, I thought I was called to be a priest. I thought that was my vocation. And I think there are jobs that perhaps and experiences that you wouldn't choose, but when you're called to do it. Now, think about it a second. When we do Wounded Warrior events or we go up to do wreaths across America. What do you tell the widows, the families of the fallen, that you were too afraid to go through a little bit of uncertainty, a little bit of difficulty to do a job like this when they actually were in harm's way? What do you tell the young man who's a double amputee because of war, that you were afraid to go through that? I don't think anyone would choose to go through unpleasantness, but if it has to be that to do what is right, then so be it.
Coming up, more of our exclusive interview with Justice Clarence Thomas, including his thoughts on the fight over historic monuments when the Ingraham angle continues. Welcome back. We continue now with our rare exclusive interview with Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas. In part 2 of our conversation, we discuss the recent controversies over statues and monuments in America, his love of the Constitution, and that small Justice Thomas exhibit finally added to the National African American Museum. There's a controversy because the Smithsonian Museum, African American Museum, for its first year, after it opened its doors, it had basically no reference to you except a reference to the confirmation battle. Did you think anything of that, or?
Not really. I mean, people who cared about me did, obviously, but no, not really. I mean, I grew up at a time when I was exposed to just wonderful range of ideas in a segregated library, in a black library, the Carnegie Library in Savannah. I mean, you might read George Schuyler in the Pittsburgh Courier, or you might read a book by, Ralph Ellison or Baldwin, or you might read one by Richard Wright. So you might read something about Booker T. Washington, but then W.B. Du Bois. So you had this range of ideas. And I think we're getting quite comfortable in our society limiting ideas and exposure to ideas. And maybe that's a symptom of it, I don't know. But I don't think it's good for the next generation and the people who will be learning. I mean, I think I learned a tremendous amount in the Carnegie Library simply from being exposed to a range of ideas. I mean, why would a little kid in Savannah, Georgia be reading Ayn Rand? Why? I mean, somebody exposed me to it. Somebody made the books available. Someone said it's okay for you to read that, and you should read it and learn from it.
Were any statues torn down during your time as a young boy in the South? Did you see any big historical monuments moved ever or taken down?
Well, I didn't see that much iconoclasm. I think there were all sorts of other problems.
Other problems with the...
But, I think when I grew up and where I grew up in Savannah, the people I grew up with were a different people. I mean,
how so?
When you think of people like my grandparents, these were people who had been through quite a bit and had a calmness and a contentment about life, and they understood putting things in context, what was important, priorities. What battles are you going to fight today? What decisions you're going to make? What decisions you're going to make today will result in you being able to eat, those sorts of things. And long term, that these two boys they were raising will be educated and that they will have good manners and go to school and be polite to the neighbors, etc. I think that today we seem to think that everything has to be one size fits all and people can't have opinions that make us uncomfortable or ideas that make us uncomfortable or that we don't agree with. They would not tolerate that.
So your grandparents went through real segregation.
They went through
real racism, real racial hardship.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
There's a plaque in your office with a quote on it that's attributed to your grandfather. Tell us about that.
Well, actually, my grandfather's favorite saying was, there were lots of opportunities in that environment to, as you could imagine, to want to say that you couldn't do certain things. And my grandfather, who was raised in part by his grandmother, who was a freed slave, and raised by an uncle, and his mother died when he was a young boy. So he was raised by his grandmother and his uncle later on. Well, when you would say to him you couldn't do something, his response was always the same. Old man Kant is dead. I helped bury him.
Old man Kant is dead. I helped bury him.
Yeah, and that was his view. He would say that to you when he got you up at 4 in the morning to go on the farm, and you said, I can't do this or do that. Old man Kant is dead.
That is, I wish I knew your grandfather.
Well, yeah, I wish a lot of people knew him, and I wish he was still here so I could thank him.
The fact that you raised a son and a nephew, what did you learn from that?
You know, I think you're raising kids. It is a humbling process.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it gets increasingly humbling as they get older. And I think any parent who's raised kids will understand, will tell you it's humbling.
Are you shocked after all these years, after the 60s, you were in college? When did you graduate?
71.
Well, 71. Those are tumultuous times at Yale Law School. Are you surprised at how things are still so rancorous in the United States today about foundational issues? Yeah. Not about hot, but just foundational issues, the anthem and so forth.
No, I'm not surprised. I mean, what binds us? What do we all have in common anymore? And I think we have to think about that. I think this is, when I was a kid, even as we had laws that held us apart, there were things that we held dear and that we all had in common. And I think we always talk about the pluribus unum. What's our unum now? We have the pluribus, what's the unum? And I think it's a great country. I think we, for whatever reasons, have made it some people have decided that the Constitution isn't worth defending, that history isn't worth defending, that the culture and the principles aren't worth defending. Then, you know, certainly if you're in my position, they have to be worth defending. That's what keeps you going. That's what energizes you. That's what makes it the endeavor, all of the criticism, the other things. That's what makes it all acceptable, because what you're doing is so important and so critical to the things that matter. So I don't know what it is that we can say instinctively we have as a country in common.
It's great to see you. Thank you for making some time for us today.
And thank you, and good luck with your new show.
Thank you so much, Justice. It's easier than clerking for you. Just teasing. And when we come back, why you absolutely can't afford to miss our show tomorrow night. You thought this was amazing? Details in a moment. Before we go, if you like tonight's show, you're going to love tomorrow's show. We'll be speaking exclusively with President Trump. Remember him? At the White House, just the day before he leaves on his high-stakes 12-day, 5-country, I'm already tired, trip to Asia. We've got a lot of ground to cover, so be sure to tune in. And until then, it's a perfect time. Pick up a copy of my new book, Billionaire at the Barricades, The Populist Revolution from Reagan to Trump, officially a New York Times bestseller, explains why we're here and where we're going. And I give him some advice, by the way, on who we should pick for the next Supreme Court justice. And that'll do it for us tonight.